Hey everybody, it's Jade here in the old WRIF offices. Supposed to be joined by Sean from Daze momentarily. Of course, Daze is the band that Chester Bennington was in prior to Linkin Park. So back in the 90s, they actually released a couple of albums in 1994 and then also in 1997. And so I got the wave from Daze official. Hello. Hello, thank you so much for everybody for joining us. So Sean's going to hop on here in a second. We'll share the screen. We'll ask him some questions. You guys can submit your questions as well. Hope you're being safe out there. Hope that quarantine is treating you all right. We'll, of course, ask Sean what he's got going on. I believe he needs to follow our page and then request to join the conversation. So very excited to see everybody that's waving at us. Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing? How's everybody holding up out there? Certainly a windy day here in the Motor City. And yeah, it's supposed to be nice out the rest of the week though. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm gonna scroll through here and see if we've got a request from Sean. Like I said, if you guys want to ask questions, you can do that as well. Here it is. View. There we go. We're figuring this out. Hey, there's Sean.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for doing this. What a weird time that we're living in, and certainly cool to be able to use technology in this way and talk to you as everybody's kind of sitting at home and hunkering down, if you will. So how are you doing? How are things going for you?
We're doing okay. We have several businesses, so we're just basically spending a lot of our time making sure our staff is doing okay and, making the best of a bad situation right now.
Right. Yeah, it's certainly weird out there, but a lot of fans super excited for the album Amends to be released, which of course features Chester Bennington's vocals. Songs that you guys had released back in the 90s that have kind of been reworked. And, Chester was a part of the planning of this prior to, him passing away. So how was it for you guys to kind of like reconnect with him and work with him again and see his vision on a project, 20 years after it originally came out?
Well, I think maybe to give you a little back history, Chester and I were super close. So it wasn't like I was reuniting in that fashion.
Okay.
We talked all the time. We worked out. We went on vacations. We were business partners in Club Tattoo up until the time he passed away. We had a clothing line together, and we did a lot of stuff together. We played in a couple little side bands. So it wasn't like there was this, 18-year gap, and then all of a sudden we reunited. We had toyed with putting Daze back together a couple times prior to that, and this just seemed like the timing was good for both of us when we decided to do that. So as far as when we got back on track and started working together again, it felt really good. It was very exciting, and he was very. I apologize. Somebody trying to call me. So he was excited to do the band again. He loved the songs, and he, words out of his mouth where I want a rock band of my own again, and I miss playing with you, and that's really how it got started.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great story. So then working on music, I know you said you did some other side projects with him, and obviously you've been partners for a really long time. So it wasn't so much a reunion, but going back to those songs that you guys did release in the 90s and looking at them, 20 years later, did that feel different? Was the emotion towards the songs different? I mean, I think that with the changing of the times, lyrics can change and style of music can change. And, looking back on what you guys did in the 90s and then, in 2000, the teens, how did it feel to look back on that stuff?
So there's like 9 questions in that one question you just asked.
Sorry.
So no, that's great. I think there's all really solid stuff. So, the initial intent was to go back and retrack these songs and kind of rework them a little bit. When Chester was still alive, we were working on 3 of them in the studio while he was still with us. So once he passed, obviously the idea of going back in and recording vocals wasn't an option. So we just kind of took the approach of let's modernize the songs. Let's get them in a way where they're relevant in today's music world and still maintain the original integrity and keep his vocal intensity in every track. And then we just approached every single track with that idea, is just making it about his vocals, making the song as strong as we possibly could around what was already there. So we stripped down all the music and just left his vocal track on every song and worked on the arrangement, making his vocal sound as great as they could. Then we wrote the music around each vocal track. And that's how it came to fruition. And it was a long journey. It took us 2.5 years to get the record done because of that approach. You know, writing a song backwards like that was not an easy thing to do. And then we had to do it, you know, we started with 17 songs and we whittled them down to 11. That finally made the record. So it was a lot of fun. The first couple months, it was very painful in the studio, just sitting there listening to Chester's vocals isolated. You know, there were a lot of tears. And then, like you alluded to in your comment, that the lyrics kind of take on a different meaning. And that is absolutely something that happened, because when he and I would write the lyrics, they had a certain meaning, or at least a certain point of view when we wrote those originally. Then after he passed, you listen to them and you read them again over and over, and they take on this whole new dynamic and a much deeper sense of the pain he was actually going through when we put those to paper. And it made me help understand what he was truly going through as a human a lot more.
Yeah, it was when I first heard the song, which was back, you know, a few months ago, and hearing his vocals and hearing them reworked on a song that I hadn't previously heard. It was really emotional, I think, for a lot of the fans. And I can see a lot of people are commenting saying, thank you so much for releasing this album. They're so excited for it. And to hear his vocals and to see something that he was so passionate about is really cool. And it's really emotional, especially in the current state of the world. I think it resonates with fans all over the place really well with everything that's going on.
Well, thank you. It really seems to be getting a good response. You know, we're getting literally thousands of tens of thousands of comments at this point on how much the music is touching people and making them complete this emotional journey and connection that they had with Chester. I mean, they don't know us, and that's fine. This isn't about us. We're not trying to stroke our own egos through this journey. This really is about putting our friend in a spotlight that he hasn't been seen in before with this specific project, and making sure that people get a chance to hear what we feel are some pretty fantastic songs. We feel like we created a masterpiece with this record. And obviously that's our opinion. We're biased, but we really put a lot of work into this. And we feel like Chester was such an amazing vocalist that these songs needed to be heard.
Yeah, well, and congratulations, because the song Sickness is trending top 5 on the rock album charts, which is super exciting to see. So when you guys see that happening, you know, how does that make you feel?
Man, I don't want this to sound arrogant, but it sounds to me, when I see that, it's like, you know what, we did it right by our friend. We did our friend right. We put this out the right way with the right intention. Of course, as a personal experience, I'm very excited to see our music get those kind of accolades. The top 5 is amazing, but it's for me, and I think for Kristen and for Mace, we're really, all of us just want to try to do right by our friend, and that's really where it comes from. So we feel like, okay, cool, we got one more notch for our friend. You know, that's really what it feels like.
Well, and I saw a question that scrolled by. I'm not sure if you can see the questions on your side of things, but
I will let you ask the questions you want to ask through those. So I'll stand by until you want to ask those.
Okay. Well, I saw one that scrolled up, and I'm trying to like read through
Catch them all. Yeah.
But someone had asked about the darkness of the material, both in Grey Daze and Linkin Park. Do you think that affected his mental, you know, standing? You know, if you don't want to comment on that, that's okay too. But
no.
And I think that he wrote a lot of the lyrics, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that was kind of him putting it out there.
So in which band? So Chester and I wrote all the lyrics together in Grey Daze. Some songs he wrote by himself, some I wrote by myself, but most of the time we collaborated.
Okay.
And, you know, you have to remember, so in the 90s when we were writing these originally, let's step back a second. You know, in the 80s, you had these hair bands that were writing about chicks and drugs and parties, right? And then the 90s came around, and then it became cool to write about sadness and pain and emotional distraught and all these dark things. That became kind of it sums up the 90s in itself, right? You had bands like Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Pearl Jam, and Nine Inch Nails, and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Maybe not Red Hot Chili Peppers so much in that regard, but all these bands that were writing about pain and sadness, and we were one of those bands. I think it kind of course, grew into something different with Linkin Park, and I was not part of the Linkin Park writing session, so I can't really speak to that. But I did write with Chester quite a bit, so he was very good at expressing pain. It's one of the true gifts that Chester had as a vocalist was, as a listener, you might be going through something emotionally that you don't understand. But you could listen to Chester and go, you know what? I don't know how to explain what I'm feeling, but that is exactly how I feel. What he's singing about right there, the way he's saying it, that's how I feel. And that was a way that the listeners could really connect with Chester in a way that you can't really get from most singers. And Chester was a once in a generational singer. He was that talented. You get like guys like Freddie Mercury, that comes to mind off the top of my head, that were able to touch, or Kurt Cobain, that were able to touch a generation with the way they could express their emotional feelings through their music. And that was something that Chester just really had a gift of doing, whether it be in Grey Daze or Linkin Park. He was able to do that.
Right. Yeah. And such a tragic loss. He was so talented. And like I said, as we can see from all the fans that are super excited that this is coming out, you guys did have to reschedule the release due to the current pandemic. So it's going to come out on June 26th. And in a press release, you guys kind of put it out there as to why. But for anyone who didn't see it, what was the reasoning behind delaying the release a little bit?
Look, I think there's two main things going on. You have this COVID-19 that's all over the globe, and it's affecting the distribution and supply chain left and right. Literally, the people at our record label can't even go to their jobs right now because of California's shutdown. So you have this massive distribution problem. So you have people that have pre-ordered the vinyl, pre-ordered the CDs, and you get comments like, well, why don't you just release the digital? Well, that's not fair to the people that pre-ordered all the vinyl and they were first in line. So that's first. You want to make sure that you take care of the people that actually are supporting the project. So that's first. Second, nobody wants to throw a party in the middle of a hurricane.
Right.
It just sucks. Nobody feels good about that. So we're releasing a couple singles and trying to give people something to hold on to music-wise during this time. But let's get through this crap that's going on globally, and then we'll hit the reset button coming out of it and be able to celebrate this music the proper way.
Right. What do you guys foresee, once things settle down and life goes back to normal or becomes the new normal, once the album comes out, what do you guys foresee happening, after that?
Oh, once again, that's a loaded question, right? So,
yeah,
in June, we're going to do our release, and then we'll have a couple of record release parties, and we'll just see how it goes. But, quite honestly, the music is starting to get legs on its own. Like you said, one of our songs is getting, traction on the charts. And I think Sometimes is going to be next, the new single that just released last week. I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll do some tribute shows or something in that fashion. We get a lot of questions. Are you going to be playing live? And I'll just answer that for you right now. No, we're not going to be replacing Chester. That was never the goal of this band. We wanted to finish the journey with Chester and for Chester, and it would feel disingenuous for us to get to the finish line and say, here's the new singer. That doesn't feel right. So, but, it does, something's kind of culminated over the past couple months that people keep asking us, well, will you be able to play live in any sense? And maybe we would do something in a tribute fashion where we would bring in some guests that would sing some of these songs for Chester and about Chester in a tribute fashion. We might do something like that. So maybe that's on the horizon. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that would be really respectful. I think that the fans, and like I said, the comments keep coming in of the fans that are so excited for this, to hear his voice again, to see something that he was so passionate about. I did get a question that was asked that says, how was Soul Song born? So that song specifically, how was it born? With all the songs, I mean, that one, but with all of them, was there a process for each one that was different? I mean, you said that you guys kind of collaborated. He wrote some songs, you wrote some songs. So, give us some intel on the journey that created it.
Okay, so initially back in the 90s when we wrote that, it was a guitar riff by our guitar player at the time, Bobby Benish. And we just started rehearsing through it. And That was primarily Chester's vocal track, lyrically. Primarily wrote that. I helped write some melody stuff in the chorus line, but primarily it was Chester's lyrics. And it's one of my favorite songs because of just the opening line. He says, "I will be waiting with a song of my soul." And I just think it's very prophetic. And it's like my friends talking to me from the other side. And that's a very deep and touching song for us. As far as the reissue, or the redo song that we're putting out on this record, we worked with a producer named SJ and Lucas, two different producers. And we had a guest guitar player, Chris Trainer from Bush, come in and work with the band. And we wrote that song with the producers and Chris and us, and wrote it around Chester's vocals. And then we had Chester's son, Jamie, come in and actually sing backing tracks towards the end of tracking the song. And we just made it as good as we could be. I personally feel that that song is an absolute stellar song, and I'm very proud of it.
Awesome. I'm super excited to hear the full album. And you guys have released a couple of music videos. And actually, just a couple of days ago, you guys did a worldwide streaming event of the album. So how did that go, and what was the reaction from that?
It went really well. We had tens of thousands of listeners. I don't know the final number. I'm going to guess around 30 or 40,000 streamers.
Awesome.
Just for that thing, but it's probably more than that. I don't know. I logged into as many as I could so that I could spend time with the fans and answer questions. And I think I was on 7 or 8 of the streaming parties and literally going back and forth and trying to jump in and answer comments. And I know Mace and Kristen were doing the same thing, so that I know fans, they feel a sense of ownership with Chester that I don't think I quite understood when we undertook the project. So we're trying to be as respectful as we can to those people and make sure that they feel they're getting heard and getting understood as they make comments. And it's been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, it's been very, very few negative comments. And
Good.
Even the negative comments aren't even about the music. It's about, dude, your tan isn't cool enough. It's like, what are you talking about? I run outside every day. But so, you can't argue with idiots on stuff like that. I just try to focus on the people that are being positive and sending love our way, and we try to send it back. That's really what it's about for us at this point.
And that's such a thing that right now people need. And music in general is so emotional for people. And so for them to feel connected, that makes that person feel special and feel even more of a connection with the music and with a relationship. And so that's awesome. That's really great. Someone wrote a question in that said, what's a funny memory that you have with Chester? Is there anything that comes to mind, like off the top of your head?
Man, I got 100 of them. All right, I'll tell you one. So we were doing a side project band called Bucket of Weenies. And
I like where this is going.
This was actually probably the funnest band he had ever been in and I had ever been in. We were in a band together with Ryan Shuck, myself, a guy named Mike Rouse, and a friend of ours named Cheese, who was managed Chester for a while. And we got hired to do these corporate gigs all over the country where we would go and we just played a bunch of our favorite songs. We played a few Grade A songs. We played some other stuff. Really, really fun project for us. And we did this gig in Albuquerque, New Mexico for R.J. Reynolds Corporation. It was their corporation annual corporate party where they hired us as the corporate band, which was an odd thing for us to be hired as, not our normal gig.
Right.
And for those of you who don't know, R.J. Reynolds is the largest tobacco company in the world, and they have a bunch of different brands. But we get up on stage, and this is when Chester was still drinking, and we were all partying a little bit. And he had a bottle of Jack Daniels in his hand and a cigarette, and we were partying and having fun. And we finished the song, and Chester was like, "Hey, how's everyone doing out there?" And it was a corporate party. He's used to these big concerts where people are, so stoked to every song you're going to play. But this was not that event. These guys were there, they were at a corporate event. So he asked him how everyone was doing. It was just kind of lackluster, like, kind of from the crowd. And he's like, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but he's basically, "All right, mother effers." And he holds a bottle of Jack up and he goes, "How's it feel to be getting lung cancer and liver disease?" Now, he did this because he was the one drinking and smoking and trying to have fun, but not realizing this is a company that owned all the, cigarettes and tobacco. That's their mainstay. So Literally about 10 seconds goes by. They cut the power to the stage. These big dudes come in off the stage, security guards. They literally escort us off of the property to the property line and drop us off. And Chester's confused. He's like, what's going on? And then Cheese is explaining it to all of us. Hey guys, this is, the company we're playing for here is a tobacco company. And so I just thought that was a very punk rock moment. We got to tell, a tobacco company to kind of shove it. And for me personally, look, we lost a lot of money. We ended up losing like 25 shows, and we were all depressed for about an hour or two after that. But to me, that was a funny thing that he didn't even know he was doing it. It was funny. And to me, that was hilarious.
Well, yeah, because then after that happened, was that like the fallout of Bucket of Weenies?
Yeah. Yeah, that was Bucket of Weenies. I think it was either our last show, or maybe we did another club tattoo party together. I'm not sure. But yeah, it was something that was short-lived. But we had so much fun doing it. And I have a bunch of memories like that. Awesome. He just was a lot of fun to be around. He was always wanting to tell a joke. He was always wanting to be the goofiest guy in the room. And, I can tell you, with Ryan, myself, Cheese, and Chester, I don't think we've ever laughed more around any other people in our life. I think if you were to ask Ryan and Cheese that, they would say that just when the four of us got together, it was a party on wheels. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. It's so important, I think, to have friends like that in your life that, I've got friends that I know that, like, I don't laugh with anyone like I laugh with this person, and that's such a great thing. It's so great that you have those memories to hold on to.
We would do stupid things like we would send each other gag gifts, and I remember one Christmas I got him a giant statue of Sasquatch, and we live in very nice neighborhoods, right? They're gated communities, right? And we went on Christmas Eve and put it in his lawn, right in his front yard, to embarrass him with his neighbors and stuff. And I would send him these like. One year I sent him a statue of this naked chimpanzee wearing a cowboy hat and a beer, and his things hanging down, and we just did stupid things like that with each other all the time, and we loved it. We had a great time together. He's just a great guy.
Good. Another quick question that came in. How, and this is, I've never even thought about music in 100 years from now, but somebody asked that, in 100 years from now, how do you think that people are going to perceive your music, and I guess music of this style? Like, what a wild question. I'm trying to even think of like how I think people are going to perceive music that far out. But
100 years from now will be a blip. Just like I can't really name anyone from 100 years ago. There's a couple of masters that you can think of from several hundred years ago, Mozart and Beethoven and things like that. But I don't know that music's ever going to have that kind of a standing again. Mathematically, to me, music, when you speak in terms like that, is the art of creating math. This is a very deep philosophical conversation right now, but I don't think 100 years from now will be but a blip on a screen.
Yeah.
But 10 years from now, I hope we are. 20 years, I hope we are.
Right. Yeah, it's so hard to predict, and I've been binge watching Boardwalk Empire.
I love that series.
But it's crazy to think, it's the 1920s. That is 100 years ago, and the way that life was so different, and who's to say what's going to happen in 100 years? It's impossible to say.
Can you name someone from 100 years ago?
No, like Al Capone, just like
I'm talking musically though, like music.
Yeah, no, musically.
Count Basie, right? I mean, you got a couple of the
jazz. Jazz was huge back then, but I don't know any off the top of my head.
Yeah, so that's kind of my point is, I think 100 years is a long time, and people kind of outgrow, unless you're a master like a Beethoven, and we're not that. I'm just not, rock music is not that. So.
Maybe we're keeping rock alive. We're trying our damnedest to keep
I love rock. I'm just, there's a different level of genius when you talk about the masters.
Sure. Okay, so let's just because of everything that's going on right now, and everyone's binge watching shows and listening to a lot of music. So what shows are you binge watching? What have you been doing to stay busy while we're on quarantine?
Well, I have no problem staying busy. I'm writing a book right now. I just signed a deal with Entrepreneur Press that should be coming out probably the end of the year with my wife. We're planning on opening more stores for Club Tattoo. For those of you who don't know, Club Tattoo was the business that Chester and I were partners in. Um, I just watched The Tiger King last week, and I think my IQ dropped a couple of points.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
been a huge topic of conversation. Of
oh.
course, the new episode came out yesterday on Netflix. I don't know if you've watched it yet.
No, I thought the series was over.
They released a new episode as like a follow-up with some of the characters on the show. Joel
Oh, wow.
McHale.
I'm on it tonight. I'm
Yeah,
on
so
it.
what did you think? Like, that's a huge thing. Like, did Carol kill her husband? Everyone
Yes.
has an opinion on that.
Yeah.
Do you think Joe deserves to be in jail?
No. I
What
don't think
about?
Joe. I don't think Joe's a great guy. I think he's kind of a sleazy, carnival kind of guy. And I've dealt with 100 guys like that, but I also think he was set up pretty badly with that. Even though all the dumb stuff he said about that lady and shooting mannequins and stuff, I think he's an idiot. But I don't think he deserves. I think the fact that we're paying to put someone in jail for 20 years is absurd. But I think that lady, without a doubt in my mind, killed her husband or had something to do with it.
Well, just the comment that she made. If you want a tiger to attack someone, you put sardine oil. Like,
yeah, what?
whoa.
And by the way, we didn't throw a funeral for our husband. That's pretty weird to me.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. What's and just like as a last question.
Last question.
Well, unless you want to keep going,
I'll keep going. You got people that are asking about. Yeah, we don't have to listen to them. We can do our own thing.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, what music are you listening to? Like, if you said you were running, you had made that comment that you run every day. So do you listen to music while you're running? What are you listening to? You have suggestions for bands people should check out?
So I really like 21 Pilots. I'm kind of going back into my roots a little bit with the Chili Peppers. I really, for whatever reason, this last 6 months, I just have a different appreciation for the Chili Peppers.
Okay.
What else am I listening to? I like, there's a band called Keen that Chester and I were very, very into, and I listen to them quite a bit. I don't really listen to them when I run, though. But, the new Bush song, Flowers in the Grave, is good. And
yeah, I like that one a lot.
So, that type of stuff. And then, believe it or not, and please don't take this as me being narcissistic, but I'm listening to our music a lot just to kind of get it in my head and pick it apart, I guess. What can we do better? And then we're working on, we have enough material to do another record. So we're starting to write music for the next record already.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really cool. How different do you think that this pandemic would be if it was happening in the 90s? Like, if it was happening when when Grey Daze was first coming out, and first it was 1994 and the first record was coming out, and this was happening, before the internet and before streaming things like Tiger King, how do you think that would be happening?
Well, I don't think you would get the kind of cooperation with the shutdowns, the city shutdowns that you're getting now. I think with social media, the information travels so fast that people understand the complexity and severity of the scenario that we're in. I don't think you would have seen that in the 90s or even the early 2000s. I think you would have seen a lot more fuck it type attitudes, like, no, I'm not going to do that, because they're mentioning it on NBC News with whoever the guy was, Tom Brokaw or whatever it was back then. I don't think, I can't speak for everyone else. I don't know that I would have been listening as much.
Right. Do you understand, does it make sense to you what's going on with the toilet paper and people with toilet paper?
No.
There was a big article that came out last week that was kind of explaining the toilet paper industry, and I never thought that I would ever talk on the radio about the toilet paper industry and the fact that there's consumer toilet paper and then there's like business toilet paper for bars and restaurants and businesses. The rolls are different, the sizes are different. There's a lot of thought that goes into toilet paper, and it's a wild thing that's happening right now.
I don't have a lot to add to that. Toilet paper, for whatever reason, I look at those people and I guess I just shake my head, like, what is going through your mind? That I don't understand the people that are doing the bottle, they're getting 4 cases of bottled water in toilet paper. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but, to each his own. There you go.
I went with that.
I did see something disturbing on the internet where a guy was, sneezing on oranges or something, and then the store owner came over and just clobbered him over the head. And I thought to myself, yeah, I would have to do that if I saw something like that happening. And I just don't, to me, this is a time to become a better person, not a worse person, not a
Right.
more selfish person. You see people struggling. For myself, I view myself as a leader in this community, and I want to be a better version of me, not a worse version of me.
Right.
So that's where I'm trying to lean with it. And if I see a little old lady struggling to load her groceries, I'm going to go help her. If I see someone with a flat tire, I'm going to stop and try to help them with that. To me, that feeds my soul a little bit more than just, fuck everybody, this is about me. And it's
Right.
just not really how I operate.
And that's a great, like you said, being a leader, putting that out there and reminding people, help your fellow Americans, help your fellow citizens, and let's not go a little too crazy. I got some questions coming in here. What is the next song that's going to be released after Sometimes? Are you guys planning on releasing another track before the full album comes out?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, I can't answer that. I have an idea, but I don't know for sure, and I don't want to misspeak. I think we're going to have another song come out, but it really depends on how Sometimes does, and we think Sometimes is going to do very well, at least from the, I guess what you would call exit polling from the stations or whatever. I don't know, but that's not really my department. That's kind of the label is handling all that, and they're just, they'll ask my advice on which songs or that type of stuff. But as far as timing goes, I mean, that's really Loma Vista's department. They really know what they're doing in that realm. And but hopefully, I hope you guys get another song. My guess is, yeah, you'll see something.
Okay. Do you guys plan on doing more music videos?
Yes. That I can say yes to.
Yep. Okay. All right. For most of the songs, or just like select songs that you see vision for? Or?
I don't think we're going to have huge budgets for every song, but I definitely would love to put some type of a visual with every single song on the record. So a couple of reasons. One, that people consume music so differently nowadays. They listen to a lot of music through YouTube. So we need to have some type of visual just for that respect. But then two, I think it's nice to be able to give a visual interpretation, or at least some type of an interpretation to every song, and give some type of a storyline visually that people can relate to. I think I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool to see, and music is so subjective, what people write, the people who are writing the music, they might have it mean something, but when someone hears it, it means something, it sparks a different emotion for them. So it's really cool, I find, to watch music videos and see, put a visual to what the song means to the band that's actually singing and writing the music.
Sure. What are the questions we got?
Let's look and see here. I'm trying to scroll. I've got such a weird setup. I've got my phone propped up on my computer right now. This is kind of an interesting one. Your relationship with the guys in Linkin Park, and I'm not sure that you have one, and if you don't want to answer this, that's fine. But do they have any opinions on what you guys are doing? Have you talked to them? Have they had any sort of like support for this, or?
It's an odd thing. So I do know those guys. I've had many conversations with them. I just saw them in January at Talinda's wedding. I saw Mike, I saw Joe, and I saw Dave, and they all came up to me and said hi. And I talked to Joe for about an hour and a half about the record, and they're all giving me total support in person to my face. They gave support when the label reached out just to make sure we weren't stepping on any toes. They gave full support. And then it's been crickets since we've been putting stuff out. And I'm not the type of guy to go and ask someone, hey, could you please support our record? For me, what I find odd, and this isn't a diss on anybody, this is just my own, I look at this way. I don't understand why they wouldn't organically want to support anything from Chester, because he was their brother just like he was my brother. Right. And to me, the fact that no one's speaking out is odd to me. I would assume that it would come very naturally. I know if, Mike was doing a project or Joe was doing a project or whatever, and Chester was sitting on the sideline, he would give the support because that's just who he was. Right. So I don't know. I don't know if they have an issue with us or not. I've seen them several times. Mike and I both gave a eulogy. So did Joe at Chester's funeral. We talked for about an hour afterwards. I saw him in January. We've spoken many times. The band was actually going to be coming on board with Chester and I and to do some business stuff together. So they're very well aware of me. They've done autograph signings at Club Tattoo. They've been around a lot. So the fact that they're being silent is definitely odd. I wish they weren't. But at the same time, I'm not going to beg anyone for their support. What we did, to me, is a very special, great project that absolutely puts a great profile for Chester. And Chester was a singer in many bands. They knew that he was coming to do Grey Days while he was still alive. We announced this. They knew that we were going to be recording new material. So I don't know how to answer that. You'd have to ask them. But as far as I know, we don't have any problems. And they've been supportive via email. They've been supportive in person, handshakes and hugs the whole way, but they haven't done anything publicly. So I guess you'd have to ask them.
Okay. And maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll try and get one of them on and be like, hey, what's the deal?
Yeah. No, I can't imagine that there would be a problem. First of all, the music is really good. So that, if this music was crap, there'd be a different conversation. But it's not.
What's going on in the world right now, I think has changed, from January to this is a thing to now we are living in quarantine, has just changed everybody's priorities. It's changed everybody's, what they need to do and take care of their family, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I think this has really affected everybody's day to day and maybe put things on a back burner that maybe they thought about doing. And now it's like, oh crap, I don't have time, or, I can't, I have to focus on taking care of my mom or my aunt or whoever,
Yeah. And to that point, maybe this just isn't on their radar like I think it is. I have a hard time believing that because we're kind of, out there right now and they know about the project. But, more power to them. If they're not obligated to speak on our behalf. If that's not something they feel strong about, then by all means, they don't have to do that. And I don't hold them accountable or anything, any negativity. Right. This project was about Chester. It wasn't about Linkin Park.
Right. Someone had asked the question, will the album mention which songs the Korn guitarists were on in Breaking Benjamin as well as POD? So,
of course.
Yeah. So how was it working with them, on stuff that, obviously those three bands specifically were big back in the 90s. And, as Linkin Park was also really big. And as you guys had already released your material. So what was it like being able to work with those guys?
Well, they're all really great guys. So to speak about Head and Monkey, they play on a song called B12. So to answer the question real quick, yeah, everything is listed on the album of who played on what and all that stuff. So you'll see that in depth. But I'll give you a quick synopsis. Head and Monkey, they play on a track called B12. And it was awesome working with those guys. So the initial conversations to get them involved went really well. And they were very excited when they showed up to the studio. They brought so much love for Chester in that scenario that they had done their homework. They had written awesome parts for the songs, which I couldn't ask for anything better for them to show up prepared. Right. A lot of musicians, especially at that level, might just show up and kind of phone it in. Right. But they didn't. They spent a week or two writing stuff and showed up with it ready. And, Monkey shared a really cool story after the fact where he talks about he was trying to get sober and was at a show and he was having a really tough time this night. And Chester walked up to him and he just said it was a saving grace for him. He was having really hard moment trying to keep sober in this environment. And Chester just hung out with him all night and helped him stay sober. And he came and played on that song as a thank you to Chester. And I didn't even know that until after we were done recording the song. It was great. And then Head and Jason Head from Korn and then Jason from Breaking Benjamin, they play on a track called She Shines. And that was awesome. It was great working with both those guys again. Head's become a really great friend and just a really good guy. And Jason was great. He was awesome to work with. Marcos from POD was awesome. He worked on a track called What's in the Eye with Chris Trainer from Bush. And Chris actually worked on 4 songs because he wrote so well with the band that we included him on several other things. It was awesome. And then we got to work with a vocalist named LP. And she sings a duet with Chester on a track called Shouting Out that I think is an absolutely beautiful song. It was amazing. It was a great experience. Good. But they all did it for the right reasons. They all did it to say thank you to Chester and as a token of appreciation for Chester. as not only what he did in the music world, but who he was as a human being. He touched a lot of people, you know. He was a great guy.
Yeah, it just speaks to that and how much obviously Chester meant a lot to the fans as we can see,
Yeah.
but also to those in the music community. And I think as fans of music, sometimes people don't realize the connections that bands have with each other and singers have with other members of other bands, and it's so cool to see that and see how they felt about him.
Yeah, for sure.
Was the name Amends chosen for its literal meaning, or is there a subliminal cognitive background with that?
Excellent question. So there's a song in the album called More Sky. Chester and I wrote it on a beach in Mexico, and it was a really cool sunset that was happening. And I used to be a silk screener, and the weird kind of purplish pattern that was happening in the sky reminded me of the silkscreen pattern. I go, oh, that just looks like a moire pattern. And Chester said, oh, it's a moire sky. We literally sat on the back of this truck watching the sunset and charted out the lyrics to that song. The chorus says, if I had a second chance, I'd make amends. As we were recording the record, Kristen, the guitar player, we're going back and forth with album titles. And he says, what about making amends? And we just all looked at each other and were like, that's it. So it went from making amends to amends, because that one word, it's so multi-dimensional with all of the events that transpired. It has duplicity in the fact that Chester passed the way he passed. That one word seems to sum up a lot of different things for us. And it's not a amends in a meaning of saying sorry. That's not what it means. It means kind of coming to terms with the loss of our friend. And that's really where the term came from, and that's where the album title came from.
That's really that's deep. That's deep. Okay, I've got a couple more. Sorry, I'm trying to lean in. Well, in this one, I don't think that this has been discussed, but how did you actually even meet Chester?
So this would have been 1992. We were auditioning singers for our band, and we had a guitar player who was playing with us. His name was Chris Hewlett. He wasn't in the band, but he was just jamming with us. And he said, hey, this kid sings with my brother, and he sounds just like Eddie Vedder. You guys should audition him. And we said, cool, bring him in. So we brought him in the next day or two. And this kid shows up, man. He's like 90 pounds. He's got glasses. He's got tight curly hair. He does not look like what our arrogant asses thought of a rock star should look like, right?
Yeah.
And I have to make fun of myself every time I tell this story. I have to keep myself true, because we just had this preconceived notion, like, this is not going to be the singer for us. And then he walks in, he's real shy, and then just gets on the microphone and he jams, he sings Alive. We play Alive from Pearl Jam, and he just nailed it. He sounded unbelievable. Our jaws were like, oh my God, this kid can really sing. So that was the first day I met him. And then he asked me if I would go to his house and talk to his father, Lee, and ask his dad if he could join the band. So I went to his house right after rehearsal, and his dad had 20 questions and kind of grilled us on, was my son going to be around drugs, and is he going to still go to school, and all the normal stuff a parent would worry about. Right. And we convinced him that we had his son's best interest in mind, and his dad gave him permission to come and join the band. And then we started rehearsing 2 or 3 days a week after that.
That's awesome. That's actually such a endearing story about young Chester coming in and singing Pearl Jam, Well,
he was 15 and I was 17. So I always had this kind of older brother thing with him. And then his parents saw that early. Susan, his mom, and Lee, his father, they trusted me with their son and make sure to try to keep him out of trouble and keep him safe. And, Chester was bullied a lot in school. And when he came into my world, we made sure that stopped. And I always felt very protective of him. And he was like my little brother. Up until the day he passed, he was like my little brother.
Yeah, and that's crazy to think about, him being 15 and you only being 17 years old when something started. And all of the people that are watching right now, think back to when you were 15 and 17 years old, and maybe you're only 15 or 17 right now. And the way you live your life and the course of things that can happen and how you affect people and what you say and do, and it's all crazy when you really think of the big picture of the world.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a great journey, though. I'm very happy to have taken it with him.
Good, good. I'm scrolling through to see if there's any remaining questions. Someone wants to know if you're a fan of Metallica.
Love Metallica, of course. How can you not be a fan of Metallica?
Right, right. So let's like if you can like top five of your favorite bands or like inspirational bands even.
So number one would be Depeche Mode. Um, that's where we got the inspiration for the album cover. Was Depeche Mode Violator is one of Chester's favorite records of all time and one of my favorite records of all time. So we kind of give a homage to Violator, Depeche Mode. I would have to say Keen. I would have to say The Cure. I would have to say Red Hot Chili Peppers. Metallica might be top five. I mean, so I go back and forth. As the older I get, I'm not as black or white with bands as I am albums, because I feel like bands go through great periods when they do records. The Blood Sugar Sex Magic album, I think, is one of the best records of all time from Chili Peppers. But One Hot Minute, not so much.
Right.
So Metallica, Master Puppets, Ride the Lightning. For me, those are and Justice for All. Those are some of the greatest records ever. But for me, the Black Album, not so much. And it's just, and it's not a diss on their writing. It's just, for me, music hits you at different points of time in your life, and it's really, music is the soundtrack to your life. So sometimes when you're going through a very deep emotional moment, there'll be a song that may not be the greatest song in the world, but you can track it to a moment in your life. And that's kind of how I view music. Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, I think, is probably the best record of all time, along with, the Violator album. But I don't think Guns N' Roses necessarily is one of the best bands of all time, because you have some stuff afterwards that to me is suspect. And once again, but I think for me, it's more about albums than it is about bands.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because there's music that I love an album from, but I'm like I don't know that I can say that this band, I don't love all of their records. It's one record that really stands out. But that's what's so great about music, and especially in 2020, there's so many ways to listen to music. There's so much music out there. Everyone is a DJ or a musician if you have SoundCloud, So
For sure.
So yeah, so and I don't know if you want to talk about this or not. I don't want to like overstep boundaries, but there are a few people that are asking about your last conversation with Chester, and certainly by any means, if you don't want to talk about that, we don't have to. But it is coming in, and I suppose kind of relatable.
Okay. I'll talk about moments of that conversation, because there's some private stuff that I don't want to share, but
Sure.
I can say this. I spoke to him 2 days before he passed. We were supposed to start rehearsals for Grey Daze that Sunday, and he passed away on Wednesday or Thursday of that week. We are talking about, we were in the process of opening another club tattoo store in Las Vegas. We were excited about, he had written some new songs that he was bringing to rehearsal that he wanted to show Grey Daze, because he wanted to write some new material, and he played some of those songs over the phone. I got to hear those. And he was on top of the world. He was very, very happy, which is why this was such a shock to me when I got the news. It didn't make sense to me. He was in a great spot mentally, from what I could tell. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but from what I could tell, he was very happy. And I had known he had depressive moments through his entire adulthood. I knew this about him. So this did not seem like one of those moments at all. He had just gone off the road. The tour was a success. He was happy to be doing something different. And that was the conversation. It really tailored. We were going to be doing that weekend. And he had to travel back to LA to do a TV commercial or something for State Farm Insurance, I think, if my memory serves. And then to Linda and the kids, we're going to drive down to Phoenix. We were going to have dinner Saturday night, and then we were going to rehearse on Sunday. And when he went back to LA, obviously that didn't happen.
Well, and I think that obviously with Chris Cornell and with Chester, so much light, and just over the last couple of years, mental health and mental stability has become such a huge topic of conversation of how important it is, and how, like you said, you know, you talked to him 2 days before and it didn't seem like one of those moments. He seemed like he was doing all right. And so because of this, if there is one thing to shed light on, is that people are talking about it now, and to reach out to your friends and, you know, talk to them and make sure that they're okay. And it's okay if you're not okay, and it's okay to reach out and say, hey, I'm not okay, and I need some help.
Absolutely.
Because I think that and especially right now, man, this 2020 has been so crazy, that now is the time that we can't see each other. So reach out and say hi and talk about, you know, how you're feeling and how this is affecting you, because you know, everybody's different, and it's okay to not be okay.
You're absolutely right. That's great advice.
So I guess, and there's a couple of questions. People are probably just joining us. So the new album, Amends, or the reworked album, I suppose, coming out on June 26th. We've already
It's a new album.
Yes, new album.
It is a new album.
Yes. Coming out on June 26th. For those of you that are asking, that are just joining us, you can pre-order it. It's going to be on vinyl, digitally, CD. You guys are really putting it out there. Of course, a bunch of songs have already been released. We've got some music videos, all of that up on our website, WRIF.com, of course, so check that out. But so it's been about an hour, Sean, and it doesn't even feel that way, and it's like I've known you forever, and we're just like friends now.
Absolutely. It's been a good time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Sean, thank you so much. If you have, if there's any last thing you want to throw out to the fans while we're sitting in quarantine, some positivity, or maybe a suggestion of something to keep your mind busy.
Try to find one, you know, my advice to my staff is the same way, and my friends. Look, try to find one thing every day to get you out of bed and focus on the positive, because it's the positive things that are going to make you a better person. It's going to make things go by easier. When you focus on the negative, you tend to bring more negative around you. Try to find one nice thing to say to somebody every day. Try to find one thing to, one good thing about each person you interact with every day. Those things go a long way in your own health, your own happiness. So I firmly believe that we're going to come out of this strong as a country and as a world. But primarily in America, I think we're going to come out of this strong. I know it's tough right now, but I truly believe in the message of hope, and we're going to come out of it stronger than before.
Yeah, and that's a positive light to look on. So, Sean, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who's tuning in. Just a slew of comments coming in that people are so excited for the album, so excited to hear Chester's voice again, so excited for what you guys have worked on together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, Amends coming out on June 26th. You guys can pre-order it now. What is your guys' website so that people can go online and check it out?
GrayDaysMusic.com.
All right, GrayDaysMusic.com. There you guys have it. Sean, thank you once again. Stay safe out there. Wash your hands. Be positive, and looking forward to the new album.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.